this statement with a prayer. O Holy Father, bless our meeting with eyes to see and ears to hear the messages and info being presented with an open and caring and compassionate heart for all our fellow brothers and sisters, as it shall be done. Take it away, Glenn.
All right. Well, this is something I just got across. I got here in the last I got it last week. We had a lady that came and she spoke about this, and it's really interesting. And so this is called an affidavit of life.
Yeah, that's right around the lines with what everybody was speaking about for 2 hours, apparently, before we came on. So awesome. That's right on track.
Yeah. So what I wanted to do is go through this, and then I go through some. I've been researching some old law dictionaries. It's amazing when you start looking into these old law dictionaries, the kind of stuff you find, and so I wanted to maybe talk about some of that too, about Roman law. I've been beefing up my unconstitutional argument. So, anyways, let me make that a little bigger. Just looking to see how that looks on the live stream.
We're seeing everything clear on this end. Or...
Good. There we go. Okay, so what you do, first of all, is you file this into the evidence file in a court case. Now, the clerk's file is not the evidence file. So you got to have a hearing and you got to get the judge to put it in the evidence file. And so we'll go through what it says. So I was actually modifying it for someone.
So can you give us a little bit of backstory of why this woman would use this?
Well,
it's a great declaration. Did she call it a declaration at all?
It says affidavit of life. There's a couple exhibits that we're going to attach to it, and we'll go through those, and that'll explain why you want to use it. Because we all know they're administrating that minor estate, and that's why this creates a big problem for them. So, anyways, submitted by, and you put your own name out there without United States /state of whatever state you happen to be in, and care of, and you put your address with no zip code. Comes now, you put your name, a lawful man, a real party and interest in this matter, appearing specially under restricted appearance, and that's Rule E8 of the Supplemental Rules of certain Admiralty and Maritime Claims. This is actually in federal court, and so it might be different in your state court. I'm not sure, but I try and get it into a federal case. Exercising this right to petition the general government for relief of claims made against my estate under presumption of my death. And and you put your name, a man, affiant, being over the age of 18 years, competent, do witness, do state for the public record the following: that the public record on file with wherever the vital statistics, wherever your birth certificate is kept, okay? It doesn't matter where you're born, okay? You don't bother putting that stuff, but wherever wherever it's kept. So it's basically the home office in your state, wherever that happens to be, shows that the entity known as, and let's see here. How did we do that? I'm going to look at the one that I had. There we go. Right. So if I put my name there, I put my name, I'm doing one. I put my name in all lowercase. GlennWinningham, House of Fern, where those X's are. The entity, no, hold it now. Let me look there again. Yes. Yes. Then I put GlennWinningham Fern there. Okay. So I used capital G, capital W, capital F. That's common law, basically. And it says, so you put your name there, upper and lower case, normal, not all block capital letters. Took the first breath of life on the 4th day of the month of, the month that I was born, whatever day. Okay, so you got to put whatever day you put there is your date of birth. Of the month of whatever year of the month, and then the year, and whatever year. Okay, and then you shorten it right here, and that as of the date of this affidavit of life, the entity known as, and then again your name, upper lowercase, is still alive and breathing. And since the 4th day of month of, and this is your 18th birthday. So then if you're born in 1957, then that'll be 1975. That'll be your 18th birthday. The affiant has not surrendered nor abandoned any claims of life, nor any and all claims of estate, to include but not limited to, and this is, you put all block capital letters, okay? So this is Glenn Fern, and this one would be GlennWinningham Fern in my case. Whatever, it's in all block capital letters. And the attachments, Exhibit A and Exhibit B of this affidavit, are considered as points and authorities of law. And that's it. That's all you do. I do affirm I've read the above affidavit and do know the contents to be true, correct, complete, not misleading, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And then you put your right thumbprint in your own blood, okay? And that's important because we're going to see why it's important here right now, the witnesses. And we, the undersigned witnesses, attest that we individually and collectively know the entity as, how did I do it? GlennWinningham, House of Fern, all lowercase. That's the way I did it. To be alive and breathing, and he is not lost at sea, but walks among us upon the land. And we did witness him affix his signature to the above affidavit of life, and also to place his right thumbprint in his own blood upon this document. And so, if you're in jail, you do it get prisoners in jail to sign this thing, because all you do is you print their name here where the X's are, General Post Office, whatever city and state you happen to be in. And 2 witnesses, right? What's the Bible say? 2 witnesses? And here's Exhibit A. And this is Corpus Juris Secundum, Section 16, page 733, jurisdictional requisites. Remember, we talked about this on another one of these events, okay? We talked about this Corpus Juris Secundum. Somebody actually brought it to me, and I want to say thank you. Quite frankly, most of my stuff I get from other people. There's very little that I think up myself, quite frankly. I knew I was looking for something like this because I knew that I needed to do this. And when this lady talked about it on Tuesday, this last Tuesday, so if you actually, it wasn't recorded. She didn't want us to record it either, so it wasn't recorded. But it was last Tuesday she talked about it. She said that she's a convicted felon, and in federal court. That's kangaroo court. She's a retired major from the U.S. Army. She's worked in the hospital. She's a radiologist, but she's got a PhD. She's a pretty smart lady, and so she's doctor, whoever, and she's retired. Although I guess she could work, she's not that old. But anyways,
Forced retirement? Was it forced?
I'm not sure, but again, if you're retired from the military, once you're in the military, you're always in the military. I don't care if you're retired or not. And what they can do is you're on inactive reserve for the rest of your life until you're 65. And even during World War II, they were bringing retirees back that were in their 70s and putting them back to work. And so you're never really, once you're in the military, you're always in the military. Anyways, says here, this is corpus juris secundum. The death of the person on whose estate administration is sought is a jurisdictional requisite. Okay, it's required. While the presumption of death arising from absence may present a prima facie case sufficient to warrant a grant of administration, if it subsequently develops that such person is in fact alive, the administration is void. And so it's absolutely essential to the jurisdiction of the administration of a state that the person on whose estate such administration is granted is dead. And this is in corpus juris secundum. This is what I did is I added this stuff in. She didn't have these court citations, but when you have that, somebody went and brought this to me, and so I'll show you where I get that from in the actual document in a minute, as soon as we're done with this. So there's these court cases right here. A living person has no estate subject to probate, and there's no vested right of inheritance in the estate of a living person. And these court cases. Any administration on the estate of a living person is void, and these court cases. And then the other exhibit B, is the Cestui Que Vie Act of 1666. And I added in, that was all she had. Okay. I added in, where it came to America, the Code of Law for the District of Columbia. And this here part, I'm not sure if I would have it in there, because it's kind of like letting them off the hook, because then it's talking about if you've taken control of the securities in your Treasury direct account. So
Which they'll never admit to.
No, they'll never admit to, but I'm thinking about taking it out. Anyways.
But you have to give them an out. You have to give them, I've always been of the belief, and in all my writings, you always have to give them an avenue to get out.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily agree with that, but so anyways, I'm thinking that I'll remove that, but that is where it's codified. What this Code of Law for the District of Columbia, this is where it's codified. It could be codified in other places too. Anyways, and then a certificate of mental competence. Okay, she's worked in the medical profession. Okay, so she knew lots of doctors, and so she got a doctor to sign this. And so whatever his name is, a medical doctor with board certification in psychotherapy, hereby state that, and your name is a living man and completely mentally competent in the broadest meaning of that term, and is fully capable of taking independent actions, and is a completely competent man. And so, again, this part is not mandatory. It's a good idea. If you know a doctor that will do it, then, and actually, I happen to know a couple doctors, and so one of them actually said that if you get three of them, whether they're board certified in psychotherapy or not, if you get three of them to say this, then it'll never be rebutted. But anyway, so I was actually thinking about doing that. I know a couple, at any rate. So that's it. That's the whole thing. They like to put people in a mental institution, and so that's why this is really powerful.
Yeah, you know how much it is to get one of your, if you wanted to get a medical evaluation done yourself and pay for it, it's over $7,000. So I hope those doctors you know are going to give you a deal.
Yeah.
That's how much it is up here anyway. But no, it's always been advised that if you have a medical evaluation on file, that's a very, it's a legal document, right? So it's worth your blood, and it's definitely evidence that you're alive, right? You've got
Right.
your feet on the ground. The
Right.
one thing you need to be careful with, and this is what I got into after 2018 and understanding the common law with you, is I met a gentleman who told me that I needed to do this document, which I did way back then, and declared that I was living. And one of the stipulations, because of prior to COVID, was the original blood, right? That you mark your document with your own blood. Well, now that COVID's come out, it's been noted that that DNA being on that paper can be considered toxic material. So, in order to put it into your living document correctly, you need to cover that with cellophane after it's been done.
Tainted blood. Good point.
Yeah.
Tainted blood.
So just be careful about that avenue. And the gentleman, actually, John's familiar with him because we were in a group together. He was a czar, and he passed away in 2021 of a heart attack at 58 years old. Was a very brilliant man that knew a lot about all of what you're talking about right now. So I wish I would have brought that information forward to you way back then. But yeah, it's vital that you let them know that you're a living man and woman in your any court case.
Actually, it is absolutely, but I wouldn't worry about putting cellophane over it. What she did is she got it entered into the evidence file, and she had to have a hearing because the court clerk's file is not the right file. There's a second file, and so you had to have a hearing. You have to get the judge to put it into the evidence file, and then she ordered a certified copy of it from the clerk. And the clerk said, "Oh, I don't know if we can do this today." And so she was kind of surprised, and she said, "Well, so when should I come back? I don't mind coming back." And so then she said, "About 3 days from now, and we'll have it for you." And when she got it, she showed us the certified copy. I'm telling you, that thing's got stamps all over it, and so it is it is it was put in stapled into a special little binder. I mean, all sorts of stuff, and so that's what made it so powerful. And what she said happened is the U.S. Marshals were looking for her, and she was at home, and they went to her mother's place, and her mother called her up and said the U.S. Marshals were here looking for you, and well, she said, "I'm right here if anybody wants to see me," but they didn't go to her place, and so they were looking for that minor estate is what they were looking for, and so all of this stuff kind of got nipped in the bud. And anyways, this is the corpus juris secundum that someone provided, which I thank you very much. So it says here, it says all of that stuff that we just talked about. But notice here, right here, it says footnote 1, footnote 2, and footnote 3. I don't know if you're seeing that. Yeah, right. You can see it. You seeing my mouse? Yes, you are.
Yeah, I see it. I see it.
So footnote 1, footnote 2, and footnote 3. So that's where I got the court cases. Okay, so here's footnote 1 right here. footnote 2, and footnote 3. So I put all these court cases in there. Actually, it might be useful to put this in there: production of the body not required. Yeah, that's something to think about.
Well, thanks for the point about the evidence file.
Sorry?
Thanks for the clarification of the evidence file versus the court of the clerk of the court.
Right. It's not the clerk's file. It's another file.
It's still on the docket, though? Like the same main docket?
Yeah, it'd be the same court case. It would be the same court case. You have to ask for a hearing and get the judge to put it in there. And so I would suggest you do it in get a federal court case, because everything there, she had a federal court case. So I mean, you could sue somebody, and then have it put in the file, and have a hearing with the judge and just tell them, I have evidence here that I want to put in the evidence file. And if he says, well, that's with the clerk, and say, no, that's not the file that I want to put into. I want to put into the evidence file, not the clerk's file. And this lady said there was no trouble once she had a hearing. The judge knew exactly what she was talking about. And then after it was in there, she went to the clerk and said, well, I need a certified copy of that. And the clerk started running around and said, we're not going to be able to do that today. And she was kind of surprised, and she said, what? I mean, I'm here. I don't mind staying. I'll stay till closing time. And the clerk said, we're not going to be able to do it today. And I said, and then she figured, well, so when's a good time for me to come back? I'll just come back. When's a good time? And the clerk said, 3 days from now, I'll be fine. And so, that's what she did. And when she got it back, I mean, that thing's got stamps all over it. And it's a certified copy. So the original with the human biological matter on it, as in the blood, is still with the court. Okay, it's a copy, certified copy. So you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. And people are worried about it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So you're saying, so in other words, that evidence file is more private, so to speak, and that's why she had an issue with getting those certified copies that she requested.
She actually called it the private side of the court.
Got you. So that could be another way to express it if you get pushback. Just a private filing, maybe you could call it that.
I wouldn't call it that, but she called it the private side of the court. But it's the evidence file. I just call it the evidence file. I wouldn't call it a I don't know. I haven't done it yet, so I can't say. But I wouldn't call it a private file. That's almost like it's not with a court. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. So but it's not accessible to the public like the main docket.
Right.
Is that the beauty of doing the evidence, putting stuff in the evidence file?
Yeah.
I got a quick question.
Thanks for that clarification.
About in the scriptures it says, "In the blood is the life," and this is just something I heard chatter in the back channels. Who owns the patent and copyrights to that genetically altered blood now? And do you see that as potentially being an out for them?
I don't know. Again, I'm not interested. This is strictly common law. Okay, you got to understand. I mean, you look at how the witnesses are done. General Post Office, Bedford, Texas. It's strictly common law, and so you're not talking about the birth certificate. You're just talking about the public record that's on file at the Bureau of Vital Statistics, which is the birth certificate, but you're not saying it. It's the public record. Shows the entity took the first breath. Ooh, look at that. Breath of life on the 4th day of the month of, you see what I'm saying? So I'm not going to read anything into it that's not there. But this is strictly common law.
Yeah, but what I'm wondering is, could they potentially weasel out of it if you've had inoculations that where the blood is now, it's a patented, copyrighted product. You have been genetically altered.
Are you going to disclose that? Everything's about
No,
disclosure. So if you keep your
but
mouth
I'm
shut,
wondering
then
if
it's
they
none
would
of their
look at it.
business, is it?
So you don't think they'll do an exam of the
If you keep
sample
your
and
mouth
try to
shut, it's
weasel out
none
of
of
it?
their business.
They know you put that gum in Sally's hair in the 4th grade.
It's all about, in all court cases, it's about the evidence you give against yourself. And if you started bringing that shit up, who knows what the fuck could come out. And again, I see people do that all the time, and they sabotage themselves. You don't tell them any more than you absolutely have to get to accomplish what you want. No use in fucking making it way more complicated than it is.
Yeah, we need to watch some Carrie videos right now.
Absolutely.
Where it took them 8 hours to answer one question in district court or in Washington. It was beautiful.
Well, I think that if you're dealing with private intellectual property in the form of biometrics, that it makes sense, because you yourself just said the clerk does public, but when you go into a judge and you're entering evidence that's private, that's only related to a man or a woman, it's put under seal.
Well, I don't know if it's put under seal or not. I don't think it has to be. Matter of fact, I don't think it should be. You want this public, but it's supposed to be in the evidence file. There's a difference between the court file and the evidence file. There's no reason to complicate this thing way more than what you need. I don't care if it's sealed. I'm going to be telling everybody and their brother about it.
I just want to thank you. Throughout the years, I've learned so much from you. I don't want to interrupt what you're doing, but I just want to say many times I have literally prayed and gave thanks for you. It's an honor to be here listening to you.
Well, it's a networking thing. I got this from somebody else, and when I saw it, I knew this thing was absolute gold, and it is. I'm gonna file it into. I'm thinking about a federal court case that I'm my recent federal court case. I'm thinking about filing into there, and I'm thinking about, now that I know this file exists, I'm thinking about filing some other stuff too, an affidavit of citizenship, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, well, I have a question for you then, because on the public side they make securities because it's abandoned property. Wouldn't you want it to be sealed, that no one has the right to securitize your intellectual property?
See, you're mixing law again. Okay, I don't give a shit
No,
what they do with it. You're mixing your law.
you,
Okay, I don't know
yeah,
that they do that. And you're mixing your law. And I'll tell you, if you go in there and start talking that way, they'll say you're crazy. You need to have your head examined.
well, typically, but I speak equity, so it isn't about law. But
You
I
know,
do comprehend what you're saying.
equity is satanic. You know that, right?
Well, no, because according to Proverbs 1 and the
No,
jurisdiction of the Messiah.
Actually, normally equity is supposed to follow the law, which is common law. But when common law, that's why in the cause of necessities for taking up arms, it says the king.
I have to kindly and respectfully object and interject. I respectfully dissent to what you just said. It's erroneous with all due.
You know, I just muted you. It's if you read the cause and necessities for taking up arms, it says that the king has extended the courts of admiralty and vice admiralty far beyond their ancient limits to supersede the course of common law and use and the exercise and publish the use and exercise of the law martial. Okay, so martial law supersedes common law. So you cannot go in there and argue them both at the same time, and I'll mute anybody else that wants to start talking about that. And so you don't understand what's going on. And so you want to argue law. That's all you want to argue. You start arguing the terms of the contract, like bonds and all the rest of that shit, then you better know what you're talking about, because under what happens, and I talk about this all the time, is that when you have martial law, there is no common law, and that's not to say common law doesn't exist, but it's two separate jurisdictions. You cannot argue them both at the same time. And so you mix your laws. What happens? And they'll tell you you're crazy. You need your head examined. And they might even send you to a shrink. So, you know, you don't know what you're talking about. Matter of fact, I can show you. I can show you.
Glenn,
I can show you. You know, do I need to mute somebody else?
Oh, I just wanted to ask you if you knew the difference between coat of arms, capital A, and small arms, ARM, you know, with small a. Yeah, I think that's where the confusion was, but go carry on. Thank you.
So this is a PowerPoint presentation for a presentation that I have that I actually did part of it on last Tuesday. So you'll see it on last Tuesday's on YouTube. I'm just looking for where I ended it.
And they didn't axe it on YouTube. That's good.
How was that? Did someone say equity was evil or something satanic or something? That's a new one.
I'll show you here
Satanic?
right now.
That's not new, John. Come on.
I'll show you right here, right now. As soon as I find it.
It's where all the spells come into play.
Here we go. Right here. This is in that non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge H. Ellida, the Utah Supreme Court. It says, this is a war over the intrusion of the civil law upon the common law. In the court, Diamond v. Harris calls the civil law, which is statutory law, superior equity. And there's a cite from this case, Diamond v. Harris, a Texas case in the 1830. It says, it's difficult to see how the courts of the state are to ignore the common law as a rule of decision when it's made so by statute and adopt the civil law, even though it had the merit of superior equity. And then he goes on, says, in the meantime, civil law was a form of law imposed in the Roman Empire, which was largely, if not wholly, governed by martial law rule. Equity has always been understood to follow the law. That's common law. To have superior equity is to turn things on their head. This is exactly what happens when martial law is imposed. If equity is the law, then it follows its own course rather than following the common law, thereby destroying the common law and leaving what is called equity in its place. And how many times have you gone into a court and the judge will say, I can do anything I want in here? That's why, right there. That's exactly why. And there's other stuff here that talks about it. Right here. The causes and necessities for taking up arms. Statutes have been passed to extend the courts of admiralty and vice admiralty far beyond their ancient limits for depriving us of the accustomed and inestimable privilege of trial by jury in cases affecting both life and property, to supersede the course of common law, and instead thereof to publish and order the use and exercise of the law martial. It's either one or the other. And for altering fundamentally the form of government established by charter, we saw the misery to which such despotism would reduce us. That's dictatorship, okay? Despotism is dictatorship. So martial law supersedes common law. Normally, equity is required to follow the common law, which is found in the Bible. Under martial law, there is no common law. That's why they have to make codes for common law crimes like murder. Civil law is governed by martial law. All statutes are civil laws. Under civil law, equity can do anything it wants, thereby destroying common law, which makes it satanic. And I've actually had judges admit, yes, this is satanic. That goes to the Roman cult. Civil law, Roman law, and Roman civil law are convertible phrases meaning the same system of jurisprudence, that rule of action which every particular nation, commonwealth, or city has established peculiarly for itself, more properly called municipal law. That's that 1871 corporation. It says right in it, it's a municipal corporation. That's Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. So the Vatican's Roman law was brought in to the federal government with the 1871 Municipal Corporation at 16 Stat 419, and the Vatican, the Roman cult's minor estate, was brought into America with the Code of Law for the District of Columbia at 31 Stat 1432. And the bar members and attorneys were changed with the Bar Treaty of 1947. And in my case recently, the state bar, I sued the state bar, they said we have immunity. Well, that's because they're claiming it under the international, let me find it here.
Foreign and Immunities Act?
Yes, yeah, that's it. They're not saying that's why they're claiming immunity, but that's why, because they're foreign agents and of the Vatican. Just a second.
Did we confirm it was did he say 1890 foreign immunities? I'm not saying that right.
Can I make a comment? How are we going to get our own blood?
You do that, you can get in trouble.
So this is all coming from the Roman cult. But, and I've done a bunch of research into these law dictionaries lately. And so we'll show some of the stuff that I come up with.
Was your court case dismissed because of this foreign immunity stuff they claimed, or was the judge, did he let it stick?
Well, they ruled against me, and it's now in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit, if that's what you're wondering.
Mm-hmm. Because they stood on that foreign immunities situation.
Actually, they made a decision that was without prejudice, which means they're basically saying that the federal court was the proper court that I brought it into, and if I want to change the arguments, then I can bring it again.
Let's see.
So this is what's really happening. It's a comparatorium, okay? In civil law, comprises a judicial inquest, okay, made by delegates or commissioners to find out and relate the truth of the cause, okay? This is Holthouse A. New, 1847 dictionary, page 114. Okay, that's what's happening. It's an inquisition. In any court case they have nowadays is because it's all Roman law. It's all Roman law, which is civil law. Civil law and Roman law are convertible phrases. Remember, we just read that. This is taken from Waterston Encyclopedia of Commerce and Mercantile Law, 1863, page 582. Roman or papal states stretch across the central part of the Italian peninsula in an oblique direction from the Adriatic to the Mediterranean, between Tuscany, Modena, Lombardy on the northwest, and Naples on the southeast. Area, it's 17,822 square miles. Population in 1833 was 2.7 million. Capital, Rome. Population 153,000. Government is an elective monarchy. The Pope, for the time being, the absolute sovereign, with a consulting assembly of cardinals. Rome is the capital of the Pope's territories of Italy and anciently the Milrus of the Roman Empire. And this is the longitude and latitude. Rome is still a large and fine city, though not to be compared to ancient Rome. The streets are spacious and magnificently built. It has 5 bridges over the Tiber, 20 gates, 300 churches, and a vast number of palaces, convents, triumphal arches, pillars, obelisks, statues, and theaters, etc. And that's 1773 Encyclopedia Britannica, volume 3, page 632. Pontificality, the state and government of the Pope of Rome. Okay, again, it's a ecclesiastical state is what it is. That's 1830 Johnson's English Dictionary, page 707. This is Wikipedia. During and after the revolutions of 1848, sentiment on the peninsula grew for the establishment of a unified Italian kingdom. Southern Italy had not been united, and northern Italy since the early medieval period, being mostly under the rule of the Kingdom of Naples and the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies. Northern Italy in early 19th century came under the domination of the Kingdom of Sardinia, which besides the namesake's island also ruled the expansive Piedmont and Savoy regions along the French-Italian borderlands. The formerly Republican leader in southern Italy, Giuseppe Garibaldi, made common cause with the House of Savoy to overthrow the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies, and the people voted in a plebiscite to join Sardinia and to form the Kingdom of Italy in 1861. The Papal States and the city of Rome were annexed to the kingdom in 1870. So think about it. That's like the U.S., where a state joined the Union, right? The state is still a state. And competing the unification of Italy, the kingdom lasted until the aftermath of World War II, when the 1946 Italian institutional referendum ended the monarchy. And that's taken from Wikipedia. So think about it. It was a state before. It's a ecclesiastical state is what it is. These documents talk about ecclesiastical states all over the place. Libertas ecclesiastica. This is a frequent phrase for all our old writers to signify church liberty or ecclesiastical immunities. Excuse me. The right of the investiture extorted from our kings by force of papal power was at first the only thing challenged by the clergy, as their libertas ecclesiasta was but by degrees under weak princes and prevailing factions under the title of church liberty. They contended for a freedom of their persons and possessions from all secular power and jurisdiction, as appears by the canons and decrees of the council held by Boniface, Archbishop of Canterbury, at Merton, A.D. 1258, and at London, A.D. 1260. And that's found in Cowell. Okay, Cowell was one of the ancient writers of those days. See Lord Lyttelton's history. Lyttelton, that's Coke, Lord Coke. Lyttelton's history of him too, and Robertson's history of, actually, I should probably italicize all of this. And that's taken from Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, volume 2.
Wonder
Bishop.
what the implications of an American pope's going to be, if that's going to change things up dramatically.
I doubt it. He's supposed to be he's supposed to be a globalist. Bishop. In the Church of Rome, the Pope was the chief right of electing bishops. Nevertheless, some princes have reserved to themselves the right of nominating to bishoprics, after which the Pope pens his approbation. And the bulls, matter of fact, I think this should be cents, because F's look like S's back then. The Pope sends his approbation and the bulls to a new bishop. That's 1773 Encyclopedia Britannica, Volume 1, page 556. The history of Italy. This is why the Magna Carta. This is what precipitated the Magna Carta. The history of Italy, AD 1108. Cardinal Locurus is chosen pope and takes the name of Innocent III. He receives allegiance from the prefect of Rome and requires homage from all in the ecclesiastical state. Okay? It's all over these documents. It's an ecclesiastical state. The modern part and universal history from the earliest account of time, compiled from original writers, volume 25, page 430, 1761. And not long after this, by general excommunication of the king and people for several years, because they would not suffer an archbishop to be imposed upon them, King John was reduced to such traits that he surrendered his kingdoms to Pope Innocent III to receive them again and hold them of him under the rent of 1,000 marks. That's the concessions of the Pope. That was in 1213. Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, volume 2, under the definition of Pope. Fictions of law. You know, they were started by the Romans. Fictions of law are invented by the Roman praetors, which is basically like, you know, some government officer, maybe a judge in Rome, who, not possessing the power to abrogate the law, were nevertheless willing to derogate it under the pretense of doing equity. Fiction is the resource of weakness, which, in order to obtain its object, assumes as a fact when it's known to be contrary to truth. When the legislator, so this is saying a couple things. These judges were acting as legislators. When the legislator desires to accomplish this object, and the reason that's important is because a bill of attainder is a legislative act. Desires to accomplish his object, he needs not feign his commands. Fictions of law owe their origin to the legislative usurpations of the bench. And that's Bouvier's Law Dictionary, 1856 edition, page 520. Fictions of law. It's said that every fiction must be framed according to the rules of law, and that every legal fiction must have equity for its object. And they're quoting Coke, 10 Coke, 42, that's Coke in the 1500s. To prevent their evil effects, they are not allowed to be carried further than the reasons which introduce them necessarily require. And that's Bouvier's Law Dictionary, 1856 edition, page 520. And this is the Lateran Pact, 1929. The sovereignty and exclusive jurisdiction over Vatican City, which Italy recognizes as pertaining to the Holy See, forbid any intervention therein on the part of the Italian government or that of any authority other than that of the Holy See shall be there acknowledged. So they're basically saying that we recognize the Vatican as sovereign, and actually, if you read that Lateran Pact, they agreed to defend the Vatican too. Fiduciary. Fiduciary is Roman law. There's a friend of mine that will go into court, and when they call the name, he'll say, I'm a beneficiary of a trust with that name, and I hereby appoint you, pointing at the judge, to be trustee, and I demand you settle this matter immediately. Now, are you going to perform your fiduciary duty? Okay, that's all Roman law. He's talking Roman law. Are you going to perform your fiduciary duty, or do I have to sue you for breach of trust? And the judge will get up, throw off his black robe, and walk out. The term is borrowed from the civil law, which is Roman law. The Roman law is called the fiduciary heir, the person who is instituted heir, who was charged to deliver the succession to a person designated by a testament, which is a will, right? But Pothier says that fiduciaries heiress, properly signifies the person to whom a testator has sold his inheritance under the condition that he should sell it to another. And I'm not sure what that's all about, but anyways. Bouvier's Law Dictionary, 1856 edition, page 520. Anyways, that's the stuff that I discovered when I was searching these old law dictionaries. I got about 160 of them, and so that's all stuff that I found so far. That set of books called the where is it? The Modern Part of the Universal History from the Earliest Account of Time. That's like about a 45 volume set. And so all over the place, it was talking about ecclesiastical state. And it was talking about some of the cities that were part of that ecclesiastical state. Naples, it talks about the some of the cities right up here in the front where we talked about it.
Is Sardinia one of the two Sicilies?
No, Sardinia wasn't listed. At least not that I saw. Might have been, I don't know. But it listed Tuscany and Modena and Lombardy. There was a bunch of cities that were part of the papal state or ecclesiastical state. They called it an ecclesiastical state. Well, so think about it. If it was an ecclesiastical state then, it's still an ecclesiastical state.
Yeah, like I said, church immunity. That's kind of like what their looks like.
Exactly. Under the Lateran Pact. So Roman law comes from the Vatican. That's my point in all of this. And the First Amendment says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. So it's unconstitutional for them to be bringing Roman law into America. And that's the stuff that the War of Independence was fought over.
Some YouTube videos have said that Italy protects the Vatican because it holds so much gold.
Well, they did. I don't know if they hold it anymore. There's a rumor that we seized anywhere between 250 and 650 airplane loads of gold from the Vatican when they interfered with our election in 2020.
Yeah, and it's probably another 20 different other reasons, right, other than the gold. So we'll never know that answer.
Anyways,
well, I'm glad that
everybody.
I'm glad you don't see the living will as, not breaking the clean hands doctrine, because it just seems like a progression of flow of, how you want to make your status known to the courts, but in an eloquent way.
If you want to do something like that, just don't bring it up. It's all about the evidence you give against yourself. Just don't bring it up. If you're going to have a living will, that sounds like you want to make sure that things are taken care of when you kick the bucket. So when you kick the bucket, they can take care of it. Meanwhile, you're alive, so you don't bring it up.
The living will converts over to your will upon your passing.
I know. So you don't bring it
up.
Please. I think Lincoln had a quote like that. If you don't want to argue a point in law, don't bring it up.
So this is part of that that Inquisition presentation. It's going to be, I'm going to be talking about it on next Tuesday. I'll be going through this stuff. I got to this point here last Tuesday, right here, when I was talking about my subscription channel. I got to that, and they said we're out of time, and so I just ended it right there. So everything that, all the rest of it before there is in on my YouTube channel under a live stream for last Tuesday. That'll be Tuesday the let's see here,
Third. No.
6th.
Second.
6th.
Oh,
So
Tuesday. I thought you meant last Friday. Sorry.
so anyways, so this coming Tuesday, we'll be talking about this stuff, and I'll finish this presentation, which is, another 200 slides. So, we'll see how many. Actually, no, it's not. It's about another 100 slides. But so the point is that if you want to see where I go with it, it's all an Inquisition. Every court case is an Inquisition. It's the Roman law, and it's unconstitutional. And so, but the real solution is that an affidavit of life, and they're screwed. Because they're administrating that estate. That's all under Roman law.
Yeah, they will not rebut.
You said abrogate and derogate. I can kind of guess what derogate means, but look up those words.
Derogation of derogatory, right? Derogatory.
Right. What's abrogate? Yeah.
Abrogate. This is basically the same thing. Derogate, damage it. So, does anybody have any questions? I see that there's lots of comments in YouTube.
I have a question. What's the best way to draw your blood to make a print?
You're kind of muffled.
Oh. What's the best way to draw blood to make a print?
I got what's the best place. I didn't get the rest of it.
Oh, what's the best way for blood to make a thumbprint in blood?
I'm still not getting you.
Okay. Okay, that's right.
Maybe put it in the chat on my channel, on my Telegram, on my page, on
Yeah.
the law group.
Okay. Okay. I will.
I think I heard her correctly that she said, ask what is the best way to get the acceptance of the living. Yeah, how to get acceptance of the living will. So there's no acceptance, is it? You're just filing it. Is that correct?
I don't do living wills. That's affidavit of life, and I don't know anything about a living will. That's an affidavit of life, and when you get it entered into the evidence file, then they have to accept it because the court accepted it. So they have no choice but to accept it. It becomes a government document. They have to accept it.
I've heard some language that you're supposed to allonge it into the file. Now, I don't know if that's, it's probably during, the case, but what about post?
Well, I'm planning on putting it into a court case that's already closed. We'll see what happens. that my case in the district court is over and it's closed, and I filed an appeal, and so we'll see what happens. If
Well,
necessary,
the
I'll
counter
open.
search is still open. It's still open though. They're still using it.
Yeah, I know. I've had the clerks even tell me that, but that's the clerk's file. I don't know if I'll be able to get the judge to file something into it. The clerks file stuff into it, but I don't want the clerk's file. I want the evidence file, and there's a difference. Once it's in there, though, you get a certified copy. They can't deny it, and so then you submit those certified copies, and it's a done deal. They can't dispute it.
Can you say how big you are and what this is to evidence?
You know, your volume is way up. It says 163%. Maybe that's why you're kind of hard to understand.
How is it? Let's see.
Well, that's better. It's down 105% now.
Yeah, it's just a poor connection. Maybe if you go out and come back in, we'll be able to hear you a little bit more clearly.
Maximum equity follows the law. The maximum equity follows the law. Unlike equity's remaining maxims, is limited in its application and operates within a very narrow limits. Adverting to Pomeroy.
You know, I already read to you.
Equity's jurisprudence, fourth edition.
I already read to you what the court said. Okay, if you don't want to believe it, then help yourself out. I don't know what to tell you, but I already read to you. I know that equity is supposed to follow the law, but when you're under martial law, it's different. And I don't know how many times I have to say it. I don't like repeating myself. So I'm fully aware of that. I know the maxims. And your volume's way up too high, too. It says 185%.
Maybe you could put his rationale in the chat for us also, so we can.
He said the maximum of equity. Maxim says equity follows the law. I know that.
Mm-hmm. We all know that. Yeah, but maybe he's trying to.
But he's not taking into account that it's martial law, and that means there's no law. That's why the judges will tell you I can do anything I want in here, because they don't have to follow the law. And
there was a friend of mine who, there was a friend of mine who was in a traffic court situation, and this arrogant judge was going through all the cases, within 5 minutes of each one. And she actually was as arrogant as to say, "Do you think I'm a bank sitting here?" And the litigant said, didn't know how to answer, of course, but I just heard this as forcing. But of course, that's exactly what she is as a bank, right? But she was making it seem to those that weren't of such clear understanding that this court is definitely not a bank, which was exactly what they are, collecting for the Bank of America, the Bank of Canada, whatever. That's collecting. They're big collection officer.
When you bring that up, you're mixing your law, and so you don't bring that stuff up. The only way you bring that stuff up is if you sue them, and you get a forensic accountant to develop some evidence to show it is. But until then, you don't bring it up. You're mixing your law.
Yeah, I guess the judge was provoking whoever was
Probably.
arguing whatever. Yeah, yeah. She was in for it that day.
Yeah, no doubt.
So
But yeah, they'll
I
test
got
you.
a question regarding this martial law. So if everything is martial law, which means they can do whatever they want, why would anyone want to take a matter to them as a third party? Yeah. Why are we messing around over there if they do whatever they want?
That's because it's the only game in town.
That's the only
And
venue?
most, yeah.
No, it's the only game in town. They're all martial law courts. They're under Roman law. They tell you that in 100 different ways in everything they do.
I listen, I believe you. You very compelling. So it just begs the question, why does everybody want to run over there? Where that's the only game in town and it's obviously rigged for you not to win. Why fuck around over there?
If you can handle it administratively somehow, then that's always way better for sure. But most people don't know
Does
how.
administratively, is that pursuant to their martial law where they can do whatever the hell they want?
Yeah, that is actually.
So martial law follows the rules of administration.
Yeah, it all comes from the Roman law. Administrative.
Administration is like private. It's like private trust facilitation and management, right? That's what administration means.
You need to watch the video that I did, the first part of this video about Inquisition, because I go through all of that in there. It's anything administrative. That's why it's called a Trump administration. They're dealing with dead things. Any administration's dealing with dead things, and so that's Roman law by definition. That's why you have to have that affidavit of life, because you take yourself out of that Roman law and put yourself into common law, because common law is still there, but they're presuming it's all on presumption.
So that's the key. You go in there and you invoke your common law rights and status, interests, and such.
Yeah, but you have to prove or show that your provide evidence that you're not dead.
It's common laws for the common man, right?
Common law is actually found in the Bible. It's where it comes from.
Are there other ways to prove you're not dead besides the affidavit of life?
Not that I know of that can work. I mean, I've that's my last case was where I put on the deed that I'm a living man, and they ignored it, and they went and tried to steal my land. Although I haven't heard a peep out of them since.
Did you vocalize it onto the record?
I didn't go into their kangaroo court.
And that's why we don't go in there. If we don't have to. So are there any more questions for Glenn regarding the affidavit of life?
Ron often mentions to express UCC 1308 to same thing to fall under common law right away. Is a different way of hundreds of ways that we should use to remind them of common law while they're reminding us of Roman law.
Well, you know, if they're assaulting me with it, then they want me to sign something. I just put without prejudice, which is basically the same thing. The problem with 1-308 is it used to be 2-107, and so they change it from time to time. So why would you go and put it down when it's going to potentially being changed, when all you have to put down is without prejudice or under duress or something like that? But the bottom line is that you can still reserve your common law rights. That's when you're forcing you to sign something. And that's what I do. If they give you something to sign, then you don't refuse it, because they'll put refused and you signed it. So you have to put something down there. That's why I just print without prejudice. I sign bonds. I sign plea bargains. The judge watched me do it. I just put without prejudice there. I didn't even put a signature. I had a cop one time ask me, why aren't I going to just at least put a signature there? And I said, under Title 1, Section 1, a signature is a mark. It can be anything. And so that's my signature right now.
Bravo.
That's the way we like it.
So the affidavit of life, in my opinion, is the easiest way to, but you got to get it entered into the evidence file to change everything. And once you get it into the evidence file, I'll bet you the word goes out all over the place, and they leave you alone. But I guess we'll see. If you have like issues with family court or child support or anything like that, you know, I think that affidavit of life will nip it all in the bud.
I don't know how many times on this Friday nights you've said, don't mix your laws, but man, that's drilled into me so much that every time I go to send something out, I don't shake, but I'm like contemplating each side until I pretty much fall to my knees and just put it in the hands of God, because I don't know, it's not something that's is easy peasy to do. You need to be well informed and have a lot of well informed folks on your side to be an advocate for you if need be.
Somebody on YouTube is asking about UCC 3-205 without recourse. You know, I don't know about that at all. I have no idea. I don't know what it says. I've actually signed some stuff recently without recourse. Um, but so there's times when you should put without recourse. But if I do it without recourse, I think I'd put all rights reserved too. But you know, I don't know what 3-205 says. That's why I don't like one guy on YouTube is saying I think using UCC places one under the UCC, and I agree. And that's why I don't. The only time I bring up the UCC is if they're forcing it on me, and then I'll bring it up. I'll start using stuff like that. But other than that, I'm I'm not going to use that or even talk about it because that's technically mixing law.
I'll send you my affidavit of life so that you can review it and keep it for your file also, just so you have a different reversion. And I know you'll react it, but yeah, that doing that procedure definitely gives you, well, it just clarifies everything so well. You don't really need to put anything in writing in any other way, in my view.
In any court case, it's all about the evidence that you give against yourself. They presume certain things, but most people just go ahead and give all sorts of evidence against themselves, and that's what they use. And what do they tell you? They say anything you say can or will be used against you in a court of law. You think they're joking? You don't tell them anything. You keep it short and sweet. That's why I really like this affidavit of life, because it cuts to the chase, and it defeats everything they're doing.
Without dirtying your hands, because they're not bringing up their dirty work, which we all know they do.
Yeah. Anyways, if there's no more questions, there's a few things popping up on YouTube that I'm answering, but if there's no more questions, I guess we might as well wrap it up. I'm hoping to get this affidavit of life filed here. I want to do the problem is going to be finding some doctors. I got to get some doctors that are willing to sign that competence thing. And there's some doctors that I know, and maybe they can come up with some doctors that I don't know. If I can get 3, that'd be great. But I don't want them asking a lot of questions and stuff. They're probably not going to understand. If they're like-minded, that's one thing. But some of them, they're not all like-minded.
There's 2 in this group.
Oh, really?
Yeah, was it Dr. Avatar? Does she not Avatar? What does she go? And her husband, Jeff. They live in Mexico.
Where are they located? Are they in Texas?
Baja.
She's in Mexico. Yeah, and she's a nutritionist. So
no, she's a doctorate. She's got a biology major and something else. She is very, very intelligent, and she is very much in tune with all of this.
But would she sign? Can she legally do for licensing on psych evaluations? It normally has to be a licensed doctor through the court.
Be surprised.
Glenn, I'm going to suggest you contact Rick, because he has a network of doctors that probably could do it for you.
Rick
Martin.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, that's a good idea. Okay, sounds
good.
He's
French. Yep.
Perfect. All right.
Well, good show tonight. Like, we didn't have to mute too many folks. It was a good success, and I'm happy that you know about this, and you're not going to give me a slap on the wrist for talking about that. The living affidavit,
Yeah, I think I've been looking for something like this for a long time, and I think this is just absolute gold. The key is to get it into the evidence file, into an evidence file somewhere.
And so clarify that a little bit on how the lady that brought this forward to you, how she did it again. You said she had no problem.
Yeah, we'll have to. She's coming again to speak. And she's doing things to get people out of jail. So we're curious about that. She's a brilliant lady. She's really
Does she work in the military?
No, she's not. She retired from the military. I don't know how long ago, but she's a brilliant lady. I don't know if she is still able to work because she's a convicted felon. I don't know how that all worked out or
They
anything.
want you they want you to have a license to do all that so they can pull you in. Right? That's what they did to me. That's my same story shit.
Yeah,
You have to. They want you to be in bed with Big Pharma, and if you don't agree with their practice, then they chop you, or they turn you into a medical recipient, a medical patient.
You're not talking about Sandra, are you, Glenn?
No, actually, her first name's Heidi. I'm not even sure what her last name is.
Okay.
Yeah. So, anyways, she's going to be coming and speaking again on a Tuesday meeting, probably not this coming Tuesday, but next Tuesday. And she was very interested in the stuff that I presented, and so she said that she never knew there was groups of us like that are like minded, and so she's very interested. It's nice to network with like minded people, and she said that she's got a son that's got some problems. She's in Wichita Falls right now, and which is about 100 miles from here, and she's that's where she stays right now. She's from Kansas, but anyways.
So, how did this information be brought forward to her? Did she say?
Well, what happened is someone from our group went to a Brandon Williams event in Austin. You know who Brandon Williams is, don't you?
Yep.
Yeah, he's quite popular.
Failed attorney.
Yeah. So someone from our group went to a Brandon Williams event in Austin, and he met her there, and so it's kind of gone from there.
So, yeah, we'll be really curious to hear how she got that filed into court with no issues.
Well,
big time.
When she described it, she said that the clerk couldn't file it. The clerk was going to file it, and she told the clerk she knew that there was another file. And she told the clerk, well, I don't want it filed into your file. I want it in the evidence file. She insisted on the evidence file. And then she said that the guy had to put on his black robe uniform again, which is telling me that it was the judge. Had to have a hearing. But we'll confirm it next time we see her.
Sweet. That'll be great to hear that. Yeah, you're in the know, Glenn. I appreciate
it's a networking thing.
Glenn, let me ask you a question. Do you have coroners in Texas, or do you have medical examiners?
Coroners.
Well, then you can go to a coroner and he can give you a life statement. And you don't need you don't need an affidavit of life then.
Okay, well, I'll have to look into that, won't I?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good idea.
I learned that from Rick.
Okay. Great idea. Thank you.
Yeah, because the coroners have just the same capabilities and authority as a sheriff, right? And the coroner is the one that pronounces the death. Well, the coroner can also pronounce life.
That makes a lot of sense. Perfect. Sounds good. I'll have to look into that. So, anyways, if that's it, I think we're going to cash it in for tonight. Thanks everybody for checking us out and participating. Thanks for your questions and your comments. And I'm just looking at the chat on YouTube right now. It's a networking thing. Nobody knows everything. But you have to be careful about mixing your law. I'll tell you, you have to be careful about mixing your law.
Absolutely. Thank you, Glenn, for coming by again tonight. I appreciate every bit of time that you give us here. I want to wish all the informants, or happy Informants Day to all the informants in your life. You know who they are.
Yep. I think that I have a video that says, "Moms, please have your babies at home."
Yeah, you do. You do. I've seen that actually. Midwives are a rare entity. We need more of them. We need more of them.
You know, in Canada, it was no trouble at all. I had my daughter was born in Canada, in Ontario, and they were glad to give us a midwife because it's cheaper. They didn't have to spend so much money for the health care, and then the midwife filled out the birth certificate form, and they said, "Here, if you want to file it, you can. Otherwise, do with it what you want." And I thought that was great. That was just wonderful. And but I didn't understand a lot of what I understand now, and I wound up sending it in. But in hindsight, I'm not sure that I would.
A lot don't know. Yeah, there's plenty that don't file that any longer. And you know, all the Indigenous are being encouraged to go and file and get birth certificates now.
Yep.
So that they can be registered.
Yeah.
Because that's how much value they are to Canada if they're registered, right?
Well, and then they can kill the babies and make a bunch of money after they kill them.
There you go. We don't mix our laws, so we'll save that conversation for another time.
Yeah, well, and Kevin Annette is on their case about all of the dead babies under that they're finding at these schools. These you know, all this stuff, eh? And Kevin Annette is a wonderful guy. I'll tell you, if I got, I really think I'm going to be a billionaire one day, and if my attitude is that if I did, you know, I really don't want my kids to get it because they won't even talk to me, and so you know, he's one guy I'd like to make sure that he got taken care of because of all the work he's doing.
Yeah, he brings the eugenics issue up regarding all the testing that they did on the Indigenous in all those residential schools, which was horrible. Yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, another conversation for another time. Maybe when we start talking about nasty-grams, we can make one out for the Canadian government, whoever's acting as that at the present time, because it changes regularly.
And for the YouTube censors, this is all personal opinion. We don't know for a fact of anything, although the affidavit of life is a great idea. We know that these courts are all taking advantage of that for sure. And I like the idea of the coroner. I think that's a great idea. I'll have to. I need to contact the coroner and see what they can do.
Yeah, they'll be easier to come by than psychologists and psychiatrists for sure.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Thanks for everything. See you guys
Hey,
next
Glenn,
week.
can I ask you something before you hop off real fast?
What's that?
Did you hear Trump the other day mention about the good news that's going to be coming in the next couple of days regarding Canada? Did you hear him say anything like that?
No, I didn't. I'm curious as to what that is.
Well, that's why I was bringing it up. See if you heard it.
No, I didn't. And you know, with Mark Carney, I mean, I can't see any good news coming from Canada.
You mean Mike Carnival?
Whatever. He's a globalist through and through, and he's not going to do anything for Canada except selling down the river.
Well, there's a few of us here that are ready to get on the Trump train, so I'm ready.
Well, I know Alberta sent a delegation, and so I hope so. I guess we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out. We're kind of a captive audience, but Trump, I think he's brilliant. He's doing everything he can for we the people, and he's a brilliant guy. I think that he plays them like a finely tuned instrument.
That's pretty funny. Thanks for that laugh.
We're already part of the Americas, so we're already American in my view. Too late to the party.
Yeah, for sure.
Like a harp.
All right. Well, see you guys next week. Same time, same place, same channel.
Be here. Be square, man. Okay.
Sounds
Thanks,
good.
guys. Take care.
Stay blessed.
See ya. Good night.